Hello, my name is Matthew, and I finished reading the Empusium by Olga Tokarczuk. I really don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and it has a subtitle, A Health Resort Horror Story. This is a Polish author and novel, and winner of the Nobel Prize. And I can't remember how I came across this book. I've had it now for maybe a year. I think somebody either recommended it or maybe mentioned it, in part, in particular, because this book is a reimagining or a revisiting of The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann, which is one of my favorite novels. I think one of the greatest novels of the 20th century. A great mind, great thinker, great artist, great novelist. This is about 700 pages. If it was in the same typeface as this book, it would probably be 1,000 or 1,100 pages. And I hate to do this. I really feel very reticent making negative book reviews. I've gotten to a point where I really want to be effusive and positive and talk about the books that I like and not spend time talking about books that I don't like. I don't think I don't find it especially productive. But let me put down the Magic Mountain. The Empusium was so aggravating and annoying and bothersome to me, as an affront to my attention as a reader, that I feel more motivated to give my feelings about a book that I very much really did not like. And this book had, on paper, a lot of things going for it. A reimagining of the Magic Mountain to me sounded really interesting. A component of the Magic Mountain is that it's a microcosm novel. Another really good example would be The Cancer Ward by Solzhenitsyn, which I also really like. And I just love the idea of a remote location with a small group of characters that is emblematic of a of a time or of a culture or of a nation. I really find that interesting. The Magic Mountain is a philosophical novel, which are some of my favorite novels, where you get really great, interesting discussions, and it can be difficult, it can be dry, it can be less plot oriented, but there's a personality and kind of a push into everyday thinking, or just kind of pushing against like normal societal ideas, and putting yourself in a position to think a little bit more deeply about maybe some ideas that are taken for granted, or so pervasive that without further inquiry, they're just accepted. So The Magic Mountain, Thomas Mann, a microcosm novel, a philosophical novel, and this book, which is kind of absorbing all of these things and accepting that it's going to be something like that. The title of the book, the Empusium, which I do find very clever. So the Empusium comes from an ancient Greek, I believe, vampiric, demonic creature called the Empusa, which is a shape-shifting, manipulative, demonic little creature that does things. And it's cited in this book that there's appearances from the Frogs, which is a comedic play by Aristophanes, and then a few other references as well. And then the Pussium part, I think, has a really good wordplay for a sanitarium. So now we have a vampiric, demonic sanitarium. I do find that quite clever. The Magic Mountain, which leads you up the mountain. Unfortunately, this book leads you off the cliff. I really had major issues with this book, which I'll get into. And unfortunately, the parts that I liked that kind of came up, that kept my interest and made me keep reading, had that kind of feedback loop of when it started getting bad, or my realization of, oh, it's this kind of book. It got worse and worse and worse. And we have a main character that we follow. I cannot pronounce his name. I'm not even going to try. The back doesn't say it. Wojnitz, I think. And it follows the same premise, roughly, as Hans Castorp. We have a young man that has to go to the Swiss Alps, or some version of the Swiss Alps, to a sanitarium for tuberculosis. And we have very many similarities with the repetition, the routines of having the rest cures, and a regular diet, and limited amounts of alcohol, and regiments of tea or milk, and the people that we meet, the other residents, the other patients that what's his name interacts with. And then on top of all of this, we have a murder mystery. And it started off very promising. We have a servant in this world that's found dead, and another patient that our main character meets has really eerie premonitions and ideas of there's other things going on in the sanitarium, and no one really seems to die, and the dead seem to disappear, and there's a connection with different things, and a slight investigation. And it was interesting, Daphne, and it completely disappears. The horror murder mystery, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it's the first 50 pages or so, and then you hardly hear about it until the very end of the book. So this idea of like a horror murder mystery is very, very disjointed. That's not my issue with the novel in particular. It's the focus of the I don't know. I don't even want to say philosophical discussions. It's so obsessively minded on, and also we have a cast of basically male characters. It's all men, these patients, and a handful of them cannot escape talking about women, and it's a delicate subject because obviously women's rights and feminism and equality and things like that are tremendously important and mentionable and detrimental when we think about world history and the the placement of a woman's role in general human society, with men and women ideally working together. This book, the characters are so misogynistic and sexist, and everything that they talk about, if it's world politics or nationalism or philosophy or geometry, no matter what they talk about, everything comes back to the inferiority of women. And a distinction between this book, The Empusium, and The Magic Mountain. The Magic Mountain was a relatively contemporary novel. It was set relatively in the same decades that the book was written. This book is, I'll say, a bit of a pastiche novel where it was written in 2020, 22, 23, but then set back in the world of the 1940s or 30s with the same morality or cultural ideals from the 2000s now put back to the 1930s. And so there's this level of judgment on these characters, and it's so black and white and blatant and kind of cruel and caustic. The characters really have no problem talking about whether or not women have souls. Does a woman have a soul? Is a woman not only inferior to men, but are they actually evolutionarily behind men? Are women just a piece of property for the state or the nation? And I'm not saying that some of these ideas aren't pertinent when we think about like women's bodies and their own autonomy. I'm not making that point, but when you read it and you have all these conversations and all these dialogues about whether or not women have souls, or if they are just pieces of property, or if their only legitimate reason for being is to bear citizens, it's not to show how horrible women are, but to show how horrible the perspective of men are. And if that was kind of the whole book, I maybe would most likely wouldn't spend time sitting here talking about just another bad book that I had read. It comes down to the very ending of the book, after the ending of the book, which really bothered me. So it's all these sorts of kind of sexist things that I talked about. And meanwhile, as far as the murder mystery goes, it comes up at the beginning, it comes up at the end. It is disjointed. The writing style it's very well written. I will say well written to the point of being sterile, where it's almost like sometimes my favorite books are a little bit bad in the sense of you get a little personality. You kind of feel like you know the writer, you know the person. There's a way in which they express themselves. This book felt, at least in translation, to be fair, very textbook, very clean, very punctuated, and everything's right, but no personality. With Thomas Mann, there's tons of personality. When you get over that it's difficult, there's still a bit of Thomas Mann there going like, okay, come on, let's go. But anyway, we have the author's note, and so the book is full. It's strewn with sexist and chauvinistic ideas and conversations that have almost no pushback. These are just sort of accepted things. The book also doesn't really have very many female characters. There is an aspect of the book with some of the characters that does deal with sexual repression, the idea of the consequences of isolating yourself as a man to women. But it's so superficial and relatively kind of like shallowly titillating and kind of boring in my opinion, and extreme to the point of being not realistic. But you get to the end, all these men talking about all this sexist stuff and all that whatever. Then we have the author's note at the end of the book, and she tells us all this sexist stuff that you've been reading, I've been paraphrasing from a whole list of literary and historical figures that are part of canon. And I'm not going to read the whole list, but I just found this so obnoxious. So we have St. Augustine, William S. Burroughs, Joseph Conrad, Charles Darwin, Henry Fielding, Sigmund Freud, Hesiod, Kerouac, D.H. Lawrence, Somerset Maugham, John Milton, Nietzsche, Ovid, Plato, Ezra Pound, Jean Racine, de Rochefoucauld, Sartre, Schopenhauer, William Shakespeare, Jonathan Swift, Swinburne, Thomas Aquinas, Richard Wagner, William Butler Yeats. And it's a punch in the face. It's the idea of You've been reading all of these sexist things that are so horrible, and look, here's all these people that are so venerated that have been saying all the same things that are horrible in this book. And it makes me feel like I'm now being attacked. Like, look, all these horrible things that you're thinking. Look at all these great people, and they've been saying all the same things that you've read and thought were horrible. And I don't like it. I find it highly distasteful, um, and not exactly fair play. Um, the one name, I just lost my page, but the one name, without even going through um, looking for what exact passage, who said, um, there are thinkers on here, there are philosophers on here, but there's novelists and playwrights. Shakespeare, who's has 1,000 characters that have 1,000 different thoughts and emotions. But Jonathan Swift, so we're talking about, look, here's an author that said something sexist. And I read it and think, like, okay, one of the most famous examples of a satirist maybe wrote something down, I don't know, satirically, is very annoying. So, I read the Empusium by Olga Tokarczuk, and I can honestly say that I can give really the highest recommendation that I can to The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann. This book was such a disappointment, and I will be getting rid of it. If you've read it and you enjoyed it, and I am completely off base, please let me know if I'm missing something. I'm always happy to not miss something if I can. But I found it very aggravating. It seemed like a feminist novel that was written for me to read and feel bad about. Feel bad about myself, or the whole history of men, how horrible we are. I'm not disagreeing, but when I'm sitting down to read a book, I don't want to feel like I'm being lectured in this particular way, if that makes sense. So the Empusium, great title, really great premise. I did not like the execution. So please leave a comment if you would like, and thank you. And